The stars were dying and nobody knew how to stop it. Ho stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the screen in front of him. The image showed empty space where a solar system used to be. 5 planets, 2 asteroid belts, and a bright yellow star had simply vanished 3 days ago. Not destroyed, not exploded, just gone, replaced by absolute darkness that seemed to eat light itself. They called it the Void Cascade. It had started 6 months ago at the edge of the galaxy, so far away that most people thought it was just a strange anomaly, something the scientists would figure out eventually. But the darkness kept spreading, swallowing star after star, world after world. Millions of lives disappeared into nothing. Ho was the captain of the Horizon's Edge, a human exploration ship. His crew was small, just 20 people, but they were the best Earth had to offer. They had volunteered to fly close to the Void Cascade, to study it, to try to understand what was happening. Most ships stayed far away. Most captains were smarter than Ho. His sister worked in the engine room. She was younger than him by 3 years, but twice as smart when it came to machines and technology. She had built half the modifications on the ship herself, always tinkering, always improving. Right now, she was probably cursing at some piece of equipment that wasn't working the way she wanted. Wu, the ship's doctor, sat at one of the science stations. She was reviewing medical data from the last evacuated world, trying to understand if the Void Cascade affected living beings differently than it affected planets. So far, the answer seemed to be no. When the darkness came, everything stopped existing. People, plants, animals, rocks, everything. Yang, the tactical officer, monitored the ship's defensive systems. Not that weapons would help against something that erased entire stars, but he was a military man, trained to always be ready, always prepared. He kept his station perfect, his uniform crisp, his mind focused. Ho trusted him completely. The last person on the bridge was Bai, their communications specialist. She was quiet, mysterious even. She had a gift for understanding alien languages and signals that sometimes seemed almost supernatural. Right now, she was listening to the automated distress beacons from dead worlds, her face sad and distant. The Galactic Council was falling apart. 17 different alien species had worked together for 300 years, keeping peace, sharing knowledge, helping each other grow and prosper. But the Void Cascade had changed everything. Fear made people selfish. Each species wanted to save their own worlds first. Some were already abandoning the outer colonies, pulling back to their home systems. Humanity was new to the Council, only members for 50 years. They were still the young species, the newcomers, the ones who had to prove themselves worthy. And now they were volunteering to fly into danger while older, more powerful species ran away. Ho didn't think of it as bravery, he thought of it as necessity. Earth was in the inner galaxy, sure, but the Void Cascade was spreading faster every week. In a few months, maybe a year, it would reach human space. Running away just meant dying tired. "Captain," Bai said suddenly, her voice cutting through the quiet bridge, "I'm detecting something strange." Ho walked over to her station. Strange how? "There's a signal coming from inside the Void Cascade." She adjusted her equipment, frowning. "That shouldn't be possible. Everything in there is supposed to be gone." Yang turned around, interested. Could it be an echo, old transmission bouncing around? "No," Bai shook her head. "This is active, broadcasting right now, and it's strong, deliberate. Someone or something is sending this on purpose." Wu looked up from her work. "Can you tell what it's saying?" "Not words exactly, it's more like coordinates, a location, and a pattern that feels like an invitation." Bai played the signal through the bridge speakers. It sounded like music mixed with mathematics, beautiful and strange. Ho felt something cold in his stomach, an invitation from inside the darkness that was destroying the galaxy. Nothing good could come from that. Any sane captain would ignore it, mark it in the logs, and continue their mission. "Plot the coordinates," he said. Yang stood up. "Captain, you can't be serious. Flying into the Void Cascade is suicide." "Probably," Ho agreed, "but we're out here to find answers. That signal is the first unusual thing we've detected. The first hint that there might be something more to this than just death spreading across space." "It could be a trap," Wu said quietly. "Could be," Ho nodded. "Bai, can you tell if the signal is artificial or natural?" The communications officer worked silently for a moment. "Artificial, definitely created by intelligent life, and old. The technology used to broadcast this is more advanced than anything I've ever seen." His voice came through the intercom from the engine room. "I heard all that. Brother, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, you're an idiot." Ho smiled slightly, noted, "Can the ship handle going into the cascade?" There was a long pause, then sighed, the sound of someone who knew she'd already lost the argument. I can reinforce the shields, reroute power from non-essential systems, and pray to whatever gods are listening. Give me 2 hours. The Galactic Council would never approve this mission. They would order the Horizon's Edge to retreat, to stay safe, to not take unnecessary risks. But Ho thought about all those dead worlds, all those families that had simply stopped existing. If there was even a small chance that the signal meant something, that it could lead to answers, he had to try. He called a crew meeting in the common room. All 20 people gathered, and Ho explained what they'd found. He explained what he wanted to do, and then he made it clear that anyone who wanted to leave could take a shuttle back to the nearest station. No judgment, no shame. This was volunteer only. Nobody left. Wu, who had argued against the plan, stayed. Someone needs to keep you idiots alive, she said. Yang stayed because it was his duty. Bai stayed because she wanted to understand the signal. Stayed because her brother was going and family didn't abandon family. The rest of the crew stayed because they were human, and humans had a reputation for doing incredibly stupid things in the name of hope. 2 hours later, the Horizon's Edge turned toward the coordinates. The ship moved slowly, carefully, toward the edge of the void cascade. Ho watched the darkness grow on the screen, filling his vision like an ocean of nothing. All systems reinforced, reported from engineering. If this doesn't work, at least we tried. Shields at maximum, Yang confirmed, ready for anything. Bai's station glowed with the signal growing stronger as they approached. The invitation is still broadcasting. Whatever's in there, it's waiting for us. Ho took a deep breath. This was insane. This was probably the last decision he would ever make, but doing nothing while the galaxy died felt worse than trying and failing. Take us in, he ordered. The ship crossed the boundary between light and darkness, and reality bent around them in ways that shouldn't be possible. The journey into the impossible had begun. The moment the Horizon's Edge crossed into the void cascade, everything changed. Ho felt it first in his bones, a sensation like falling and flying at the same time. The ship shuddered, but not from any physical force. It was reality itself that was shaking, bending, breaking the rules that held the universe together. What's happening to the instruments? Yang shouted, gripping his console as numbers scrolled wildly across his screen. His voice came through the intercom, high and stressed. Everything's going crazy down here. Time is moving wrong. My chronometer says we've been in here for 3 hours, but my watch says 30 seconds. The quantum drive is reading energy signatures that shouldn't exist. Wu looked pale, her hands trembling as she checked her medical scanner. Our bodies are fine. Physically, we're normal, but the space around us is sick. It's like the universe has a fever. Outside the viewport, the darkness wasn't really dark. It was more like color had stopped existing. Ho could see shapes moving in the nothing, patterns that hurt to look at, geometry that made his head ache. Stars flickered in and out of existence, there and not there, alive and dead at the same time. The signal is stronger, Bai said, her voice calmer than everyone else's. She seemed almost peaceful, like the strangeness didn't bother her. We're close to the source, very close. The ship moved through the impossible space, and time did strange things. Sometimes seconds felt like years. Other times, hours passed in a blink. Ho couldn't tell if they'd been traveling for minutes or days. His body said one thing, his mind said another. Then suddenly there was something ahead, something solid in all the chaos. It was a structure, a station, but calling it that felt wrong, like calling an ocean a puddle. The thing was massive, bigger than any ship or station Ho had ever seen. It was made of material that looked like crystal and metal mixed together, surfaces that reflected light that wasn't there, angles that existed in more directions than three-dimensional space should allow. That's impossible, whispered through the intercom. The design, the materials, the way it's holding together in this place. That technology is thousands of years beyond anything we know, maybe millions. Yang ran scans, his military training fighting against his shock. No weapons detected, no shields, it's just sitting there like it's been waiting. It has been waiting, Bai said softly. The signal is coming from inside, it's an invitation to dock. Ho made another insane decision, take us in. The Horizon's Edge approached the ancient station, and a docking port opened like a flower blooming. The ship settled into place with a gentleness that felt wrong for something so massive. The connection was perfect, seamless, like the station had been built specifically for their ship. Atmosphere in the docking area is breathable, Wu reported, checking her instruments 3 times to be sure. Earth normal, oxygen, nitrogen, the right pressure. Someone knew we were coming. Ho gathered a team, himself, Yang for security, Wu in case someone needed medical help, and Bai because she understood the signal. Wanted to come, but someone had to stay with the ship. She argued for 5 minutes before finally agreeing to monitor everything from the bridge. They wore their suits anyway, just in case. The airlock opened and they stepped onto the ancient station. The interior was beautiful in a way that made Ho want to cry. The walls glowed with soft light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The floor was smooth but not slippery, warm but not hot. Everything felt designed for comfort, for welcome, for peace. "This place is old," Wu whispered. "I can feel it, like walking through a tomb." They moved deeper into the station, following the signal that Bai tracked. The corridors were wide, the ceilings high. Everything was built on a scale that suggested the makers had been larger than humans, or maybe they just liked space. Then they entered a central chamber and saw it. The being. It stood in the center of the room next to a floating sphere of crystal that pulsed with inner light. The being looked almost human, but wrong in subtle ways. Its proportions were too perfect, its skin too smooth, its eyes too large and too knowing. It wore robes that seemed to be made of starlight, and when it moved, reality bent slightly around it. "Welcome," the being said, and its voice was inside their heads rather than in the air. "I have waited a long time for someone to answer my call." Yang raised his weapon instinctively, but Ho put a hand on his arm. "Who are you?" "I am called many things in many languages," the being said. "For your comfort, you may call me. It is a name I have worn before in times long past." "You're the one sending the signal," Bai said, not a question. "Yes, I called for help. I called for someone brave enough or foolish enough to enter the cascade. I called for humans." That surprised Ho. Why humans specifically? There are 16 other species in the Galactic Council, many more powerful than us. Tilted its head in a gesture that might have been amusement. "Because humans do impossible things, because you are young and don't know what cannot be done, because your species has a gift for sacrifice that others have forgotten." Wu stepped forward, her fear buried under her need to understand. "What are you? How old is this place?" "I am a remnant," said, "a leftover from a time before your galaxy had its current shape. My people existed when the universe was young and wild. We shaped stars, crafted worlds, played with the fundamental forces of existence, and in our arrogance we created weapons." The being gestured to the glowing sphere. "This is one of those weapons, the Void Cascade. It was designed to reset everything, to wipe the cosmic slate clean when existence became too corrupt, too tangled, too broken. My people activated it by accident, then fled rather than face what they had done. They ascended to higher dimensions, abandoning this reality. But I stayed. I stayed to guard the weapon and wait for someone who might fix what we destroyed." "Can it be stopped?" Ho asked, his heart pounding. "Yes," said simply. "That sphere you see is the key. It can seal the wound in reality, can stop the cascade from spreading further, but it requires activation energy that no technology in your galaxy can provide." Yang lowered his weapon, understanding dawning on his face. What kind of energy? His expression became sad, ancient grief showing through its perfect features. A soul, a complete consciousness willingly given, one life burned as fuel to power the key and save all other life. Silence filled the chamber, the words hung in the air like a death sentence. "You're saying someone has to die," Wu said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not die," corrected gently. "Death implies an ending, a transition. This is annihilation. The consciousness chosen would be completely consumed, converted to pure energy. No afterlife, no cosmic continuation, no trace remaining in any form. Absolute end." Bai spoke, her voice steady despite the horror of what she was hearing. "And if we don't, if no one volunteers, then the cascade will continue until every star is extinguished, every world is erased, every living thing is gone. The galaxy will become void, empty, silent. In approximately 1 standard year, everything you know will cease to exist." Ho felt sick. One life for the galaxy. One person completely erased from existence to save trillions. It was an impossible choice, a terrible bargain, a price no one should have to pay. "Why do you need permission?" Yang asked. "Why does it have to be willing?" "Because forced sacrifice has no power," explained. "The key doesn't just need energy, it needs meaning, it needs choice, it needs someone who understands the cost and accepts it anyway. That's what gives the sacrifice its power to remake reality." Wu was shaking her head. "There has to be another way, another energy source, something." "I have spent millions of your years searching," said with infinite sadness. "There is no other way, I am sorry." Ho looked at the sphere, the key that could save everything. It was small, maybe the size of his fist, glowing with soft blue light, something so small to hold such terrible purpose. "We need to tell the council," he said finally. They need to know there's a solution, even if it's horrible. Go agreed, share what you have learned, but know this, the cascade accelerates. You have perhaps 3 of your months before it becomes unstoppable. 3 months to find someone willing to pay the price, or everyone dies anyway. The team returned to the ship in stunned silence. Ho couldn't find words for what he felt. Relief that there was a solution mixed with horror at what it required, hope tangled with despair. As the horizon's edge pulled away from the ancient station, beginning the strange journey back through the void cascade to normal space, asked the question they were all thinking. Who do we ask to stop existing? How do you choose someone for that? Nobody had an answer. The Galactic Council chamber erupted into chaos the moment Ho finished his report. Representatives from 17 species shouted at each other in a dozen different languages. Some demanded immediate action. Others called the whole thing a lie, a human trick. The ambassador, a tall creature with compound eyes, accused humanity of creating the cascade themselves just to gain political power. Ho stood at the center of it all, exhausted and angry. They'd spent 3 days getting back through the cascade, 3 days of time moving strangely and reality bending around them. 3 days of his crew barely speaking, each person locked in their own thoughts about what they'd learned. Ambassador Jin, Earth's representative to the council, called for order. She was older than Ho, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, with a gift for politics that he'd never had. We have verification, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. The Horizon's Edge's data logs show everything. The ancient station exists, the being called exists, the key exists. And you expect us to believe that murder is the answer, the ambassador clicked. One human life for the galaxy, how convenient for your species to be the heroes. Nobody said anything about heroes, Yang said from beside Ho. We're talking about sacrifice, about losing everything to save everything. The debate raged for hours. Some species suggested forcing criminals to volunteer, or prisoners, or anyone deemed less valuable. Others argued that any coercion would violate the requirement that the sacrifice be willing. The philosophical arguments tangled with the practical ones, and nothing got resolved. Meanwhile, Wu had begun analyzing the biological requirements. She worked with scientists from across the galaxy, trying to understand exactly what the key needed. Could it use any species or only humans? Could it use artificial intelligence or clones or any consciousness that wasn't naturally born? The answer came back after a week. Only a naturally born, fully developed human consciousness would work. Something about human brain structure, human neural patterns, made them uniquely compatible with the ancient technology. It was humans or nothing. That made everything worse. Some species breathed easier, relieved that the burden fell on someone else. Others felt guilty for that relief. Humanity found itself isolated, simultaneously honored, and the species that had to make an impossible choice. Bai spent her time listening to the transmissions from dying worlds. The cascade had accelerated just as had warned. 5 more systems had fallen in the last week. She recorded the final messages, the desperate pleas for help, the parents saying goodbye to their children, the silence that followed. Someone has to do it, she said quietly one night in the ship's common room. Every day we wait, more people die, more families end. Ho knew she was right, but the knowing didn't help. How do you ask someone to stop existing? How do you tell them that their consciousness, their memories, their dreams, their very soul would be completely destroyed? The volunteers started coming forward after the second week. Thousands of them, humans from across Earth and its colonies, each believing they could be the one. Scientists who thought their contribution to knowledge was complete. Soldiers who saw it as their ultimate mission. Old people ready to die anyway, young people seeking meaning, believers who thought sacrifice would grant them paradise, depressed people looking for an escape. A committee formed to interview them. Ho refused to be part of it. He couldn't sit there and evaluate human lives, deciding who was worthy of being erased from existence. But Jin made it clear, as the captain who discovered the solution, his input mattered. So he attended, silent and sick, listening to people explain why they should die. Most were rejected immediately. The glory seekers who wanted their names remembered, the suicidal who were running from pain rather than toward purpose, the manipulated who'd been convinced by family or society, the coerced who felt pressured to volunteer, anyone whose motivation seemed impure, anyone who didn't truly understand what they'd lose. One volunteer stood out. Her name was Bora. She was someone who studied alien life across the galaxy. She was 37 years old, average height, with kind eyes and calloused hands from field work. She had no family. Her parents had died when she was young, killed by a plague that swept through the outer colonies. No siblings, no children, no partner, just her work and her research. I've spent my life studying connections, she told the committee. How species depend on each other, how ecosystems balance, how everything in the galaxy is linked together in ways we barely understand. I've seen the beauty of it, the way a small creature on one world affects the atmosphere of another world light years away, the way everything matters. Ho listened from the back of the room. There was something different about Bora. She wasn't excited or manic or depressed. She was calm, certain, at peace. I don't want to die, she continued. I love being alive. I love the smell of alien flowers, the taste of strange foods, the feeling of discovery when you find something new. But I understand what my life could mean. One thread holding the tapestry together. That's not nothing, that's everything. The committee asked her every difficult question they could think of. Did she understand there would be no afterlife? Yes. Did she know she would simply cease to exist? Yes. Was anyone pressuring her? No. Did she have any doubts? Some, but that was natural. I'm not running toward death, Bora said finally. I'm walking toward purpose. There's a difference. After she left, the committee debated. Wu argued that Bora was too valuable, that her research helped too many people. Jin argued that wasn't the point, that the choice had to be Bora's alone. Others worried that accepting her volunteer would set a precedent, that it would make human life seem cheap. Ho finally spoke. We're not making her do anything. We're giving her the choice to do something impossible. That's what humans do. We choose, even when the choice is terrible. They voted. Bora was accepted as a candidate, but not confirmed. She would go through more interviews, more evaluation, more chances to change her mind. And meanwhile, the search for alternatives continued. Locked herself in the engineering bay, running calculations day and night. Could they build a power source strong enough? Could they amplify energy from a star? Could they use antimatter or quantum fluctuations or anything else? She worked until her eyes burned and her hands shook, but every solution failed. The math didn't lie. Only a human soul could power the key. Yang proposed a military lottery. Every soldier in the human forces would enter, and one would be randomly selected. A chance, not a choice, but that violated the requirement that the sacrifice be willing. Random selection meant no true acceptance of the cost. Days became weeks. The cascade consumed more systems. The galaxy watched and waited, and humanity struggled with what they had to do. Bora spent her time preparing. She visited the ancient station twice more, guided by the coordinates Ho had provided. She spoke with, learning about the process, understanding exactly what would happen to her consciousness. The ancient being was kind, patient, answering every question with brutal honesty. You will feel no pain, explained. Your consciousness will flow into the key like water flowing downhill, natural, inevitable, and then you will simply not be. No thoughts, no awareness, no existence of any kind, complete absence. And that's what powers the key, Bora asked, the energy of a consciousness converting to pure force. Partially said, but also the meaning, the choice, the willingness, that creates a resonance that can reshape reality. Your species understands this instinctively. Why you honor sacrifice, why you tell stories of heroes who give everything. The giving matters as much as the gift. Bora visited Earth one last time. She walked through forests, swam in oceans, watched sunsets. She said goodbye to colleagues, donated her research to public databases, wrote letters to people who had mattered in her life. She prepared like someone facing certain death, but with a grace that made Ho ashamed of his own fear. I'm ready, she told the committee after 30 days. I understand, I accept, I choose this. The final vote was taken. The committee approved Bora as the sacrifice. Ambassador Jin presented the decision to the Galactic Council, and after more debate, more argument, more desperate searching for alternatives, they accepted too. One human life for the galaxy. One woman who had chosen to stop existing so that trillions of others could continue. The date was set. In 7 days, Bora would travel to the ancient station. She would place her hand on the key, and she would end. Ho met with her privately the night before. They sat in the horizon's edge's observation deck, watching stars through the viewport. Do you hate us, he asked quietly, for accepting this, for letting you do this? Bora smiled. No, I hate what happened. I hate that the cascade exists, that the ancient species ran away from their mistake, that the galaxy needs saving at all. But I don't hate you. You gave me a choice. That's all anyone can ask for. I wish there was another way. So do I, but there isn't, and between everyone dying and one person dying, the math is simple, even if that one person is me. They sat in silence for a while, then Bora spoke again. Will you be there at the end? Ho nodded, his throat tight. Yes, the whole crew will be there, you won't be alone. Thank you, she said softly, that helps more than you know. The 7 days passed too quickly and too slowly. The morning of the sacrifice was quiet. Bora woke up in her quarters on the horizon's edge, took a shower, and put on simple clothes. Nothing special, nothing ceremonial, just comfortable pants and a shirt. She'd refused all suggestions of formal dress or ritual. "I'm not a symbol," she'd said. "I'm just a person doing what needs to be done." The ship traveled through the void cascade for the last time. The journey felt different now that they knew what waited at the end. Reality still bent and twisted around them. Time still moved strangely, but there was purpose to it now. Direction. Ho found Bora in the common room, drinking tea and looking at photos on her tablet. Pictures of alien worlds she'd studied, creatures she'd documented, discoveries she'd made, her life's work compressed into digital memories. "Regrets?" he asked, sitting across from her. She looked up and smiled. "Some. I would have liked to see the new species they discovered in the Andromeda Relay. I would have liked to finish my research on symbiotic relationships in extreme environments, but everyone leaves things undone. At least I know mine mattered." Joined them, her eyes red from crying. She'd spent the last 3 days trying to find a last-minute solution, some miracle of engineering that would make Bora's sacrifice unnecessary. She'd failed, and the failure weighed on her like stones. "I'm sorry," said, her voice breaking. "I should have found another way." Bora reached across the table and took her hand. "You did everything possible. Sometimes there are no good answers, only necessary ones." Wu arrived next, carrying medical equipment that she wouldn't need. She'd wanted to be prepared anyway, just in case. The doctor in her couldn't accept that there was nothing she could do, no treatment she could offer, no way to keep Bora alive. "I'll monitor your vital signs until the end," Wu said. "At least I can make sure you don't suffer." "Thank you," Bora said simply. Yang came in uniform, standing at attention like he was reporting for duty, but his voice was soft when he spoke. "You're the bravest person I've ever met. I've served with soldiers who face death without fear, but what you're doing is different. You're choosing to stop existing. That's beyond courage." "It doesn't feel brave," Bora admitted. "It feels necessary and scary and right somehow all at once." Bai was the last to arrive. She'd been quiet through all of this, processing in her own way. Now she sat beside Bora and spoke in her soft, measured voice. "I've been listening to the transmissions from saved worlds, the ones that survived because we found the key in time. They don't know your name yet, but they will. The galaxy will remember Bora, the human who chose to end so they could continue." Bora shook her head. "I don't want to be remembered, I just want it to matter." "It will," Bai promised. "It already does." The ancient station appeared ahead, floating in the impossible space of the void cascade. The horizon's edge docked, and the crew prepared to escort Bora to her ending. Representatives from all 17 Galactic Council species waited in the station's central chamber. They'd insisted on witnessing the sacrifice, on honoring what Bora was about to do. Ho thought it was grotesque, making a spectacle of someone's death, but Bora had agreed to it. "Let them see," she'd said. "Let them understand what this costs." They walked through the corridors together, Bora in the middle, surrounded by her friends from the horizon's edge, followed by alien dignitaries who whispered prayers and blessings in languages she didn't understand. Waited in the central chamber, standing beside the crystalline key. The ancient being's face showed sorrow that seemed to come from millions of years of witnessing tragedy. "Bora," it said, its voice gentle in their minds, "you have chosen this freely." "Yes," she answered, her voice steady. "You understand that there is no return, no continuation, no existence beyond this moment." "I understand." "Then I honor your choice, and I grieve for its necessity." Bora walked to the key. It floated at chest height, pulsing with soft blue light. Up close, Ho could see patterns moving inside the crystal. Mathematics made physical, physics made beautiful. "How long will it take?" Bora asked. "Seconds," replied. "You will place your hand on the key and your consciousness will flow into it, like water finding its level, natural and unavoidable. You will feel a moment of connection, of understanding. You will see the galaxy as it truly is, all the threads and connections you studied your whole life, and then you will simply cease." Bora nodded. She looked at the assembled crowd, at the aliens who had come to witness this. Then she looked at the crew of the Horizon's Edge, her friends, the humans who had given her this terrible choice. "Thank you," she said, "for letting me matter." Before anyone could respond, before doubt could take hold, Bora placed her hand on the key. The effect was immediate and terrible and beautiful. Light erupted from the crystal, pouring through Bora like she was made of glass. Her body went rigid, her eyes wide, her mouth open in a silent gasp, but not pain. Ho was sure it wasn't pain, it was something else. Revelation, maybe, understanding. For 3 seconds, Bora stood connected to the key. 3 seconds where she could see everything, know everything, be part of everything. 3 seconds of absolute comprehension. Then the light flared bright enough to blind, and Bora collapsed. The key activated, energy exploded outward, faster than light, faster than thought. It ripped through the void cascade like a healing wave, sealing the wound in reality, pushing back the darkness, restoring the natural order of physics in time and space. On the stations, they watched it happen. The cascade stopped spreading, the darkness retreated. Star systems on the edge of destruction stabilized, came back, returned to normal space. The galaxy was saved. But Bora lay on the floor, and Wu rushed to her side. "She's breathing," the doctor said, her scanner moving frantically, heart beating, brain showing activity. But what?" Ho demanded. Wu looked up, tears streaming down her face. "There's no one home. The body is alive, but there's no consciousness, no personality, no memories, no Bora. She's just gone." Knelt beside the empty body. "This sometimes happens. The biological form continues after the consciousness is consumed. It will live for perhaps a few more days, then fail. I am sorry." The alien representatives stood in shocked silence. They'd watched someone die, really die, in a way more complete than death usually was. They'd watched a human woman choose to stop existing, and they'd watched it work. Ambassador Jin spoke first, her voice formal and careful. "Bora of Earth has saved the galaxy. Humanity has paid the price that no other species was asked to pay. We will honor her choice, and we will remember what it cost." The aliens agreed, one by one. Solemn promises to remember, to honor, to never forget. It felt hollow to Ho. Words couldn't bring Bora back, promises couldn't restore what she'd lost. They took her body back to the horizon's edge. Wu kept monitoring her vital signs, hoping for some miracle, some sign that Bora's consciousness might return. But the scanners showed only emptiness. The body breathed and moved reflexively, but nobody was inside. 3 days later, the body stopped breathing. Wu pronounced Bora dead at 3:47 ship time, her hands shaking as she recorded the official time. They brought her body back to Earth as she'd requested. A funeral was held with full honors. Representatives from every species in the Galactic Council attended. Millions watched on screens across the galaxy. Speeches were given about sacrifice and courage and the price of peace. Ho didn't attend. He stayed on the horizon's edge, alone in his quarters, thinking about the woman who had chosen to stop existing. Thinking about the terrible mathematics of one life for trillions. Thinking about whether they'd had any right to accept her choice. Found him there days later. She sat beside him without speaking for a long time. "I'm leaving the service," she finally said. "I can't do this anymore, can't be part of the machine that asks people to die." "She volunteered," Ho said quietly. "I know, but we accepted. We took her sacrifice and used it, and now we have to live with that. The galaxy is saved, but Bora is gone. Really, truly gone, and I don't know how to be okay with that." Ho had no answer. He'd resigned his commission already, sent the paperwork to command. He couldn't be a captain anymore, couldn't make decisions about life and death after witnessing what true sacrifice meant. The galaxy celebrated. Worlds that had been on the brink of destruction through festivals. Species that had given up hope renewed their faith. The darkness had been stopped and life would continue. But on the horizon's edge, in the quarters where Bora had lived her last days, her research sat untouched. Notes about alien species and symbiotic relationships and the beautiful connections that made the galaxy work. Work she would never finish, dreams she would never fulfill. A life ended not in death but in absolute absence. That was the price humanity had paid, not just Bora's life but her existence. And the galaxy would owe that debt forever. 10 years passed and the galaxy tried to move forward. The Void Cascade was a memory now, a historical event that children learned about in school. Star systems that had been on the brink of destruction were rebuilt, civilizations recovered, trade routes reopened. Life continued, as life always did, finding ways to grow in the spaces left by tragedy. But some things couldn't be forgotten. Ho lived on Earth now in a small house by the ocean. He never went back to space after Bora's sacrifice. Some nights he still dreamed of the ancient station, of watching light pour through a woman who had chosen to stop existing. Those dreams always ended the same way, with him waking up and knowing she was really gone, not dead, but erased. had become an engineer for civilian projects, building hospitals and schools instead of ships. She never spoke about the cascade, never mentioned Bora's name, but Ho knew she thought about it constantly. The guilt of surviving while someone else chose to end never quite went away. Wu ran a foundation in Bora's name. It funded medical research, educational programs, and humanitarian projects across the galaxy. The doctor had dedicated her life to preserving life after watching one be completely consumed. She sent Ho updates sometimes, letters about the good work being done, the lives being saved. He appreciated it but rarely responded. No amount of good work could balance the equation of what Bora had lost. Yang stayed in the military but transferred to a training position. He taught young officers about ethics and sacrifice and the weight of command. His students said he was the toughest instructor they'd ever had, but also the most honest. He never let them forget that every decision had consequences, and some consequences lasted forever. Bai was the only one who still worked in space. She'd become a specialist in long-range communications, listening to signals from across the galaxy. She claimed she was searching for new civilizations, making first contact, expanding humanity's knowledge. But Ho suspected she was listening for something else, some sign that Bora hadn't been completely erased, some echo in the cosmic background radiation. The Galactic Council had erected a monument at the ancient station, a memorial made of the same crystalline material as the key, with Bora's name engraved in 17 different languages. Thousands of people visited it every year, aliens and humans alike, paying respects to the woman who saved them all. But respect felt complicated. Some species were grateful, hosting celebrations every year on the anniversary of the sacrifice. Others felt guilty, uncomfortable with owing their existence to someone else's erasure. A few were resentful, angry that they had to feel indebted to humanity for something they hadn't asked for. Human diplomacy became strange. How do you negotiate with species whose worlds only exist because a human woman chose to stop existing? Some ambassadors used it as leverage, reminding aliens of the debt they owed. Others refused to mention it at all, uncomfortable with the idea of profiting from sacrifice. Humanity itself was divided. Some saw Bora as the ultimate hero, proof that humans were special, different, willing to do what others wouldn't. Others saw her as a victim, someone who had been put in an impossible situation and made the only choice she could. There were debates in every language, articles and books and documentaries, everyone trying to understand what it meant. But nobody asked the one person who could have answered, because Bora didn't exist anymore. The ancient being had disappeared after the key was activated. The station remained, but the being who had guarded it for millions of years was gone. Some said it had finally died, its purpose fulfilled. Others believed it had ascended to whatever higher dimension its people had fled to. Either way, there was no one left who truly understood what Bora had experienced in those final 3 seconds. On the 10th anniversary of the sacrifice, Ho received a message from Bai. She wanted him to come to her communications station. She'd found something, she said, something important. He almost didn't go. 10 years had been enough time to build a life that didn't include the cascade or the sacrifice or the guilt. But curiosity and old friendship made him book passage on a commercial transport. 3 weeks later, he arrived at the research station where Bai worked. She looked older, her hair streaked with gray, her face marked by long hours staring at screens. But her eyes were alive with the same quiet intensity he remembered. "I've been monitoring deep space transmissions," she said, leading him to her workstation. "Cataloging background radiation, tracking cosmic signals, the usual research. And 6 months ago I found something strange." She played the recording. It sounded like static at first, random noise from the universe's constant activity. But as Bai adjusted the filters, a pattern emerged. Not a message exactly, but something deliberate, organized, meaningful. "It's coming from the region where the void cascade used to be," Bai explained. "From the space that was healed when Bora activated the key. And listen to this." She adjusted the settings again, and suddenly there were words. Faint, broken, filtered through 10 years of cosmic distance and interference, but words nonetheless, in a voice that Ho recognized. Bora's voice. "Don't mourn what I gave, it wasn't lost, it became everything. I'm in the space between stars now, holding the pieces together. This isn't an ending, it's transformation." The recording cut off, leaving only static. Ho stood frozen, his mind struggling to process what he'd heard. "That's impossible." She was erased, completely consumed. Wu confirmed no consciousness remained. "I know what the scanners said," Bai replied, "but I also know what I'm hearing." That's her voice, her speech patterns, her way of thinking. Something of Bora survived, just not in a way we understand. Or it's a hoax, someone faking the signal, giving false hope. I've the source coordinates 10 times. I've analyzed the voice patterns against every recording of Bora we have. It's real, Ho. She's out there somehow in some form. The energy that was her consciousness didn't just vanish. It dispersed, became part of the fabric of space itself. Ho felt something break inside him. 10 years of grief, of guilt, of trying to accept that Bora had been erased from existence. And now this, hope or torture, he couldn't tell which. Have you told anyone else? Bai shook her head. Only you. I need you to help me decide what to do with this. Do we tell people? Do we tell the council? Do we let the galaxy know that maybe, possibly, Bora isn't completely gone? They talked for hours, debating, arguing, trying to understand what the right choice was. The recording could be interpreted many ways. It could mean Bora's consciousness had survived in some diffused form, spread across light years of space. Or it could be an echo, a remnant, a fragment of memory caught in the quantum foam. The message itself was ambiguous. Holding the pieces together could mean she was maintaining the seal on the void cascade, or it could be metaphorical, poetic, the last thoughts of a dying consciousness. There was no way to know for sure. We tell no one, Ho finally decided. The galaxy has made peace with what happened. Telling them about this recording would just create confusion, false hope, endless speculation. Bora chose to sacrifice herself. Whatever this is, whatever survived, that choice still mattered. The result is still the same. The cascade is stopped and she isn't here anymore. Bai looked disappointed but nodded. You're probably right, but I'll keep listening, keep monitoring. If there's more, if she sends another message, we'll know. Ho left the research station, carrying the weight of one more secret. The journey back to Earth gave him time to think about what the recording meant, if it was real, if it changed anything. In the end, he decided it didn't. Bora had given herself to save the galaxy, and the galaxy had been saved. Whether her consciousness survived in some impossible, distributed form didn't change the math. She wasn't a person anymore. She couldn't laugh or dream or discover new things. She'd sacrificed her existence for everyone else's, and that sacrifice was absolute. But sometimes, on quiet nights, Ho would go to the beach and look up at the stars. And he would think about energy distributed across light years of space, about consciousness becoming something larger than individual awareness, about a woman who had chosen to become the galaxy instead of just living in it. Maybe it was true. Maybe Bora was out there in the space between stars, experiencing existence in a way humans couldn't understand. Or maybe it was wishful thinking, a comforting lie the universe had whispered through random static. Either way, the galaxy continued. 17 species living and growing and building and discovering, all of them owing their existence to one human woman who had chosen the impossible thing. Some remembered her with gratitude, some with guilt. Some had forgotten entirely, moved on, let her sacrifice become just another historical footnote. But humanity remembered. In every school, children learned about Bora. In every temple and church and meditation hall, people said prayers for the woman who stopped existing so they could continue. Her name became synonymous with sacrifice, with courage, with the terrible price of peace. And in a small house by the ocean, a former ship captain sat on his porch and watched the sunset, thinking about the woman who had become part of the cosmos itself. The stars came out one by one, filling the sky with ancient light. Somewhere out there in the space between those stars, energy moved in patterns that might have once been a consciousness. A woman named Bora who had studied connections her whole life, now part of the ultimate connection, woven into the fabric of existence itself. Or nothing, just empty space and wishful thinking, and the desperate need to believe that sacrifice meant something more than loss. Ho raised his glass to the stars, a silent toast to a friend who might be everywhere or might be nowhere. Thank you, he whispered to the night, for everything you gave, for everything you became, for choosing to be the thread that holds us all together. The universe didn't answer, or maybe it did, in the gentle movement of wind and waves, in the steady light of distant stars, in the simple fact that life continued, complex and beautiful and possible. The galaxy lived, Bora did not, and in that terrible equation, in that impossible choice, lay the entire meaning of what it meant to be human, to face the darkness and pay whatever price it demanded, to sacrifice not just life but existence itself, to do the impossible thing because someone had to, and humans were the ones who could. The debt would never be repaid, the loss would never be recovered, but the galaxy would continue, carrying forward the memory of one woman who chose to end so everyone else could begin again. And somewhere in the silence between stars, in the quantum foam and cosmic background radiation, in the space that physics couldn't quite explain, perhaps a consciousness dreamed. Not as a person dreams, but as the universe dreams, vast and strange and forever. Or perhaps not, perhaps there was only absence, only the echo of what had been, only the price that had been paid and could never be returned. Either way, the choice had been made, the sacrifice had been given, and humanity would carry that weight forward generation after generation, never forgetting what it cost to save everything.